Welcome to Chaos2Cured podcast. You're here with Jeffrey Freed and Kirk Patrick Miller. We're going to talk about something that is definitely plaguing a lot of individuals that are neurodiverse, and that's insomnia. So, Jeffrey, I'm going to just hop over to you because I'm about to cough. So, you want to start off on this one?
Absolutely. Um, Virtually everybody I work with suffers from insomnia, and I use the word suffers. That's exactly what I meant to say. It's nothing good about insomnia. I read a statistic recently in a really great book about autism where it said 90 to 100% of people on the spectrum suffer from insomnia, and it's really bad. It's not just, well, it's 9:30, I want to go to bed and I can't fall asleep till 10:30. No, these are people who can't fall asleep. They have to try to force themselves to relax, and then when they do, they wake up sort of with a start, shocked that they actually fell asleep an hour later. A big time for these folks to be up is between 2 and 4 in the morning. And then they have to sit around and wait for the alarm to go off if they're unlucky enough to have to deal with that, which is, of course, most people. And they wake up and they're tired. There's several reasons for this. Number one, people on the spectrum have a lot of energy that is repressed. They are highly sensitive. They deal with stuff all day that they really can't deal with overtly. So they stuff it, repress it. And then, of course, it comes up in the evening time. It's also a feeling of being, living in a fight or flight situation. And so many people on the spectrum are on the spectrum because they can't deal with all the cacophony of intaking information that just flies out at them. They read people real well. They pick up people who are anxious. They can focus more on that than anything else. They can wonder. They always see other people looking down on them, or they perceive them to be looking down on them. They are affected by sounds that they can hear and other people can't hear. So it's a myriad. There's just a myriad of things that can keep you up. Again, it's so prominent with people on the spectrum, but it's not just people on the spectrum that suffer from insomnia. This is a time, we live in a time that is very, very cacophonous, and lots of things are going on competing for our attention. We get information from all over the world. We talk to people in other countries on the internet. There's just so much out there. And if you don't have the ability to relax, and the people I work with, none of them do, it comes out in the evening when you can finally stop doing stuff and just sit there, and it just hits you like a wall of fire.
I
You think
love that.
about everything. Go ahead, Kirk.
That was such a perfect word. So for me, I absolutely struggled to fall asleep. Still do, and anxiety is absolutely a major factor for me. And what you just mentioned, where a lot of times throughout the whole day, I was able to keep my anxiety. And you also mentioned the fact that they pick up other people's emotions and feels. So a lot of times is walking around is what we call an empath. It's draining. You see people that are frustrated, they're angry, your friend's having a really rough day, so you try to make them feel better. All of those things add up, the stress level, and secretly at the same time, it's kind of keeping me away from thinking about it. So when the lights go off, all of a sudden, when you said a wall of fire, that was a perfect, mental picture for how I felt. When those lights went off, my brain was hyperactive. It was thinking about the next day. What's this step, what happened this or today? So I would have ideas, everything spurring me from, again, keeping me from sleep. And the more I would try to relax, the more it would be a fight to actually fall asleep, because then it would bring up more anxiety. I think somebody joked about, watching a clock. You look at it, you're like, oh, it's 4:05. And it's like, oh, maybe I'll fall asleep by 4:15. And then you look at the clock, it's 4:30. You're like, okay, maybe I'll fall asleep by this time. And it never comes. So it can be extremely frustrating, especially as a student, because I would be so tired and you have to wake up and then you have to go produce. And, of course, if you add fatigue on top of all of the other things you just mentioned, which are, sounds of the lights that are annoying. We have these really bright lights in school. I always wore a hat. I still do to this day because of light sensitivity. So I thought you explained it really well. I know for me, one of the things that has helped to fall asleep, there were a couple things that I was able to do. One, I was able to visualize. I would start working on a story, or something that was in my head. It kind of kept me distracted again from that wall of fire that you brought up. I love that term. And a lot of times I would think of what my dream house was going to be, and I would design it, and that would distract me enough that oftentimes I would drift off to sleep. Some nights I didn't have any luck, and there are definitely breathing techniques. Are there some ways that you have found to be helpful? Yeah. What are some suggestions that you give some people?
Well, I'm not going to answer that directly, but I will answer it indirectly, and then hopefully later directly. What I was struck with as one of the most important things to talk about on this podcast in terms of sleep is that most people that I know, especially teenagers and virtually all people on the spectrum, have trouble because they try to go to sleep too early. Most of us are not wired to fall asleep at 10 or 11 o'clock and wake up at 6 or 7. The people that I work with, and this would be me too, we all get tired later. Our active minds get tired of spinning at like maybe 12, 1, 2 o'clock. And if we have to get up at 6, there's implied terrible stress there. We just sit there and wonder, what in God's name is, how are we going to feel tomorrow with 2 hours of sleep and then 1 hour of sleep and then half an hour of sleep, because that's what ends up happening. And it's just could all be much better if we started everything later in the morning. Now, I know this is happening in a lot of places. The county that I live in, Jefferson County in the Denver area, has just started. They just changed it this year. High school starts at 9, elementary school starts at 8:45 for all of them. And I think Denver public schools are playing with that too. And this is not that uncommon. The school districts have finally realized that most kids aren't their best in the morning. And that's so true with the people that I work with, who are probably wired to fall asleep at 1 or 2 in the morning and sleep till 9 or 10 or later in the afternoon. They do this on the weekends, but on the weekends, you can't really recover. You get too much sleep, and then Sunday night, you can't sleep again. So the thing that I do that works for me is an app called Calm. And there are lots of these apps, and they have music and such, but the ones I like are the ones that do a body scan, a mental body scan, where you go to your ears and feel them relaxed, and then a sudden feeling of total relaxation hits your forehead, moves on down to your eyes, feel your nose relax. And the person doing this for 20 or 30 minutes, that's how long the shows are, has a nice, soft, relaxing voice. That helps tremendously. And I may do that 2 or 3 times a night. It never takes that long to fall asleep. I also recommend using a fan for white noise, because so many of us lie in bed sort of waiting for a sound to shock us. Dog barks are the killer. Wind, thunder, lightning, too bright of a light shining in our face. The main thing to do is cut out the light, do the meditation, the guided meditation. That's a biggie. And take the pressure off in terms of how much sleep you need. You're not going to die from lack of sleep. I don't think anybody does. So you will sleep, but you may not have enough sleep, but you can still function. And if you get tired enough, you'll sleep. Take the pressure off. So many of us just sit around and think, oh God, it's 10 o'clock. I got to go to bed. And it's such a
Exactly.
negative experience because it's such a fight. Take the pressure off. We don't do well with pressure,
No one
especially,
does.
the autistic people do way worse under pressure, makes everything worse. So try to take the pressure off. This is also a very interesting phenomenon where, okay, there's a lot of more people now homeschooling than ever before. And they think it's because the parents don't like the bad socialization that goes on in school, the drugs, the bullying. No, I mean, all that is true, but that's not in my mind, the main reason. These kids who are homeschooled can sleep later. And if they don't sleep the night before, they tell their parents, give me another hour or so, and they can actually do it. They do so much better. This is not a generation also of people who go to bed early and wake up early. Most of us are not wired to do that. It's hard to wind down, especially when you're in such a stressful environment as so many of us are. And it is pressure. Take the pressure off. You can go to school and if you have to go to school and be there at 7:45 or something, then take classes. Insist when you make your schedule. Take classes that are not that important grade-wise early in the morning. Leave them for later. Also, because of the situation with difficulty falling asleep, so many people, again, the ones that I work with, get sick. Your immune system is not wired to sleep 4 hours and then go to school without enough food or decent food in your stomach and put up with school and having to remember stuff and be alert. It just wears down your immune system. So they get sick. And then they get sick. They get to stay home and sleep, but then they have to go back and do it again. And they get sick again. I think that such a high percentage of people missing school because of illness is because their immune systems are compromised because they never get enough sleep.
Sleep. Well, and there were a few things that you mentioned that were very vital for me. And especially with ADHD, I get distracted very easily. So little tiny sounds throw me off. So a fan is a brilliant suggestion. And it's been something that's helped me oftentimes, and this may sound really strange to some people, but for me, if I have a TV show that I've seen a bunch of times and I know it really well, it's good actual background music, especially if it's like warm-hearted and lighter, like the sitcom Friends or Big Bang Theory, something like that. I can put that on in the background. It's one of the few ways I can actually nap. I cannot nap if I throw on that background music, or a show like that. For some reason,
It's because it's predictable. Things that are predictable will lull you to sleep. If you have acute hearing and you're listening to dogs barking, they never bark regularly. They bark and they stop and they bark. It's in unpredictable noises that are the problem, make you nervous waiting for it to happen. Predictable noises like what you just talked about, a sitcom that you've seen before, or perhaps some radio show or podcast that you've heard before. It's predictable. You know what's coming, and that tends to block out other noise and helps you relax because there's no surprises. It's the surprises that keep you up. The unpredictable noises, they're the exact opposite of white noises, so it's the predictability that's the problem. And what you said is a very good way for people with insomnia to go to sleep. Listen to something familiar in the background. I mean, that's absolutely the way to do it. That's a great hint.
For me, it's especially something happy, because you hear some laughter, and I know people make fun of the laugh tracks and stuff, but when you hear that elevated mood, it just helps me focus on relaxing. Again, like you mentioned, a lot of times I need that guided meditation. So there are podcasts out there that help you fall asleep. People can also listen to certain hertz. There's one of my friends swears he likes listening to 528 hertz. These are just different notes. So you can listen to 440 hertz, which is an A, and it's just pretty much background music. and it's very gentle. But like you mentioned, the one that I found very useful was like, you imagine like you're sitting in a cloud and they would talk you through each individual digit of your toes feeling relaxed, and it would work your way up or down. And those were helpful because, again, it was the same thing. It was this consistent sound and it was instructions, something easy to kind of follow. If you don't have access to something like that, music was helpful for me as well. A lot of times my mom would come in and she's like wondering like why I'm listening to like rock music, which again, you don't think of like, Guns N' Roses as being something easy to fall asleep to. It was one of the few things that I would put that on with earphones while I was sleeping or trying to fall asleep. And for some reason that would work. There were a few things, we know scientifically limiting screen time before you sleep is absolutely important because the lights mimic sunlight. So it wakes us up a little bit. But the mindfulness and relaxation techniques, one other tip that I can give and that has helped me is whenever I'm really, and we've talked about this before with anxiety, but when anxiety is the driving factor for me not being able to fall asleep, if I can kick myself into a state of gratitude, being grateful for, I did this well today, or this, or if you can look forward to something in the next day, that is actually very helpful. Because if you can find some reason to be happy about the next day, it alleviates a little bit of the stress and pressure that I felt. So that worked for me. And again, it's not being able to sleep, as you mentioned, just killed me because I had to be up at like 6:30 in the morning. Oftentimes I wouldn't fall asleep till 3 or 4. So I was getting 2 hours of sleep going into school, trying to learn and function. And, and as you said, you can't catch up on the weekend. I can get more sleep, but I can't make up for day after day after day of not sleeping well. And so insomnia is such a major factor, not only for individuals who are going through elementary school and high school and stuff like that, but once they hit college, because at least the college experience gives you some leeway, but sometimes you have to wake up for an early morning class. It's the only time it's offered. And those morning classes just killed me. And I liked what you said. I did definitely function much better. And part of that is because of probably ADHD and some of the other things I deal with. I function really well at night. So my favorite time to work was like 10 o'clock and beyond, because then everybody else was gone. It was quieter. The lights were lower. The sounds were lower. Even on street noise is lower. So those gave me the removal of all the cacophony that you mentioned earlier helped me, which is why I functioned better at nighttime. But that's not when the world functions.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one of the worst nights. Everyone listening to this will be able to relate. It is so common for people that I know who suffer from insomnia to really, the worst night is Sunday night. It's just everybody has trouble sleeping on Sunday night who fits the profile of someone that I work with. They think about the long week ahead and all the things that they have to do that can befall them, people that they have to deal with, troubling situations, and they sit there and they perseverate over that, causing more and more anxiety. I would not want to be a classroom teacher on a Monday morning. People are usually depressed, anxious, sleepy. You're not going to remember much if you suffer from insomnia on Monday morning. That's a killer. It's always Sunday night. I have that too, and it's anticipation of the week. And there's nothing that can be done about it except make Mondays as late as possible. If you can, if you're in college or at work, work late some days, build up some hours so that you can go in a little bit later or start a little bit later on Monday. Beware Monday morning.
It's the beware and that feeling, I'm seeing that in more individuals and across the board, from young to, really young ones all the way through, adults. And the pressure everyone feels to achieve is becoming absurd. And, you know, we've talked about that before. And I do like what you've mentioned, and I feel it's kind of somewhat related, which is focus on, you know, not the results, but on how they're doing, the trying. And, you know, with falling asleep, a lot of times parents get upset. Why are you up again? You're supposed to be in bed. And the anger and the aggression that a lot of the parents get because they don't understand why this child keeps getting up. Well, I was up constantly. I would always wake my dad up at like, you know, 1 a.m. to get juice or something. I couldn't sleep. And what was helpful is my dad never actually got upset with me. There were a bunch of times where I remember my mom was like, come on, you need, you know, get to bed, stop getting up. Right. Um, my dad would just kind of flow with it. And what was really interesting is that actually helped me
Yep.
because he would actually get up with me and come help me get some juice and stuff. And I just wanted to talk to him. I didn't get to see him because he was often at work. So I didn't really see him during the daytime. So I think part of me wanted to see him anyway. But the main thing with that is it didn't raise my anxiety. It didn't make me feel badly that I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And so often, you know,
Yep.
the somebody will say, oh, you know, I didn't sleep. Well, and they blame you for it. Well, you should have gone to bed earlier, or you should have done this. Well, it's not a matter of when you can't sleep and when you're truly dealing with insomnia, it's you can't. It's very, very difficult. That's the whole point. It's so there's, you know, a few things that we've mentioned breathing exercises before. If you mix that in with, you know, guided imagery, for me, again, I said I would picture something, you know, peaceful. I'd build my own dream home, create an island for myself, you know, that kind of stuff where I could kind of create or build a story helped distract me. And it was fun. You know, those things kind of did help. Now at my age, still to this day, if I really need to fall asleep, like I said, I'll turn on a show, something familiar. The fan idea is something that I didn't actually ever think about. I was never told that. I started using a fan, and I've never even thought about the white noise. But ever since I had that, my sleep has improved. So Jeffrey, your suggestions were spot on. You know, I know that not looking forward to the next day or being apprehensive, all of those things add to keeping us awake and worry. And we live in a world of worry.
Yes, we do.
So it's there's not a lot you know, in terms that we can't change the world instantly. So we have to know that, first of all, that's one thing we are dealing with. We're not going to hear any, like, if you're going to bed and you watch a little TV, you're not going to hear story after story that's going to make you feel happy and relaxed. You're going to hear story after story of things that are going to make you feel apprehensive and worried about the next day and the future. So stay away from some of this stuff. Find a good book, you know, read something that's pleasurable. Listen to a podcast. I really liked, and you mentioned there's different apps as well. The breathing and yoga exercise, daily exercise is definitely something I would suggest too, because if I don't exercise, I don't sleep as well. And that is something that's hard to also get in when you're tired. So if you're tired all day long and you finish school and you come home, it's very difficult to want to go exercise at the end of the day, especially
Yep.
when you have homework and everything else left. So I like the idea of starting later. And I know the science has been there for a long time. So it's good to hear they're doing that in some schools. And I hope they continue
Well,
to
out
do
of
that.
desperation, Kirk.
Yeah.
It's like so many people are tardy, so many kids get sick, so many schools are under fire because of test scores, whatever. They're not getting any results. Things aren't working. So, and we see where we can't find teachers for so many classrooms. State of education is awful. People are leaving, at least in the area that we live in. They School enrollment's going way down. People are doing alternative things. Public school enrollment is down, and one of the reasons is insomnia starting too late. That they've resisted forever. As you said, the science has been there for a long, long time. But education and schools are very slow to change. But they're so desperate now that they're willing to try it. It will make it better.
Which is good. And slow to change is absolutely a perfect way to state it. I think the problem that we're seeing with technology is our technology is suddenly advancing at a logarithmic pace that the schools need to adjust much faster. And unfortunately, we do have some issues that we talked about in our previous podcast. So just how we deal with individuals that are becoming more neurodivergent, through, I guess, everything we always talk about through this world. It's pushing us faster. And, I would like to say, bring up again with the anxiety and the perception of time. Half of the time when I am trying to fall asleep, I'm worried about deadlines. Even my sleep is a deadline. I have to be up at this time. And
Sure.
like you said, when you remove that pressure, and if you have a child that literally can't sleep, who deals with anxiety, who's on the spectrum, when you look at them and say, listen, especially if you have the ability to homeschool and you say, listen, like, this is what we need to get done. So, they stay up too late one night and they have a harder time waking up in the morning. You can actually go with the flow a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think that's actually going to be very important, not just for school and learning, but I think businesses are going to have to start adjusting as well, because there's just more people that are, well, on the spectrum. We already know scientifically.
It's
Yeah.
very common. It's like one of the chief things. If you go to a therapist at this point, one of the things that you'll be going for most likely is it's chronic insomnia. It is very pandemic. There are things that you can do. You don't want to drink alcohol or something with caffeine before anywhere near falling asleep. I hear medical marijuana can be great for sleep. There are supplements like magnesium and calcium, which can help you sleep. There are things out there that you can take, but the most important thing is to not stress over it. You can say to yourself, hey, at least I'm in bed, my body is resting, and that's good for something, and enjoy the solitude. If you look at it as even if you're not sleeping, you're resting, and it's not, knowing that it's not going to kill you, and that you will sleep better the next night, most likely. So it's, in essence, go with the flow. And whenever you can, like when you're a senior or a junior in high school or in college, schedule everything as late as you can. Just that's part of your ritual. You've got to do things later, and all this stuff can make it better. It's not going to erase it. It's probably a lifelong problem, but it doesn't have to be crippling anywhere near crippling, Kirk.
Oh, well, and that's the thing. There's never easy solutions. I know with medications, that's something sometimes people lean towards. Some of the sleep medications can be very difficult to get off of. I
Yeah,
know that Dr. Sanjay Gupta just did a thing with medicinal marijuana, and with the elderly, and they specifically talked about sleeping. And if you're against medical marijuana, you can look at, they now create CBD and CBN, which is one of the cannabinoids, which has no psychoactive THC ingredients. So you can get pure CBD or CBN, which is for nighttime. And they've had phenomenal results with getting people off some of the medications. And, we've already hypothesized some of the reasons why that's working, because it does change perception of time. I believe it brings down the anxiety. You mentioned one thing, like when you're lying in bed, I really wanted to reiterate this. If you can't sleep, don't keep punishing yourself, because you are resting. And that was one of the things that helped me, because my mom would want me to go to bed pretty early. And when I was younger, of course, I didn't want to go to bed early. So that was my time to imagine things or to create stories. I'd close my eyes and if I couldn't sleep, I'd make something up. So it was a way for me to kind of look forward to being in bed, even though I knew I wasn't going to be able to fall asleep. And that did actually help at least alleviate a little bit of that feeling of lying there and being like counting the minutes or counting the sheep, so to speak. So the journaling is something that you can always do, that I've also found to be helpful. There's a whole bunch of things, but if it is a serious issue, and a lot of people do not take sleep seriously enough. And the literature on this medically points to sleeping so absolutely not just a little bit vital, but very vital to your mental health and your physical health. So if you are having some issues with this, cognitive behavioral therapy can help. You can go seek treatment, look up some apps, do what you can. Jeffrey, your suggestions I thought were really solid. The white noise, all of the things. So hopefully people got quite a bit out of this. Do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I think we did a pretty good job.
I would agree. So if you have any questions and you're listening to the show, please feel free to reach out. Let us know what you'd like us to speak about, especially if there's something specific that you or a family member or a loved one is going through. We're always happy to do shows to help. That's why we do it. So thank you so much for listening. We wish everybody a very happy week, and we will be back soon.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to Chaos2Cured podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with everyone you know, and definitely like, follow, and subscribe. Certainly leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about the next time. Also, in our show notes, there should be direct links where you can follow us on our social media, as well as reach out to us directly. Thanks again, and have a great day. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Chaos2Cured podcast are the speaker's own. All discussion is based on our own experiences. We do not and cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information. Chaos2Cured podcast cannot give medical or health advice. All discussion is based upon our personal experiences and meant for general and educational purposes. This podcast is not a substitute for professional help or for diagnostic purposes for yourself or another. Chaos2Cured podcast always encourages you to consult an appropriate professional.